My name is Lisa and I'm 45 years old. I am a single mother and have been the sole parent in my son's life for as long as I can remember. His name is Tom, and he means everything to me. We've always shared a strong bond, and I've done my best to ensure he feels loved and supported. However, recently, something changed. Something I never anticipated. It all started one evening when we were sitting on the couch together, watching a movie. It was late, and we were both starting to feel sleepy. Wrapped in a cozy blanket, we were enjoying the quiet of the moment. I thought it was just another peaceful night, but then I felt Tom move closer to me, and something about it felt different. At first, I tried to convince myself that I was imagining it. Maybe he just wanted to be near me, as he always had, but there was something about that moment that felt unusual. My heart began to race, and I tried to dismiss it, telling myself it was nothing. But the feeling lingered, and I didn't know how to handle it. As we sat there in silence, Tom shifted slightly, lifting his head to look at me. His eyes held a tenderness I hadn't seen before, and it made me feel both safe and uneasy at the same time. He didn't say anything, but his gaze seemed to silently ask if everything was all right. I forced a small smile, hoping to ease the awkwardness, but it only deepened the silence. Tom's hand rested near mine, and I could feel his fingers move ever so slightly, almost as if he didn't realize he was doing it. Each small touch stirred something within me that I couldn't ignore. I kept telling myself that this was just a fleeting moment, an awkward, strange instance that would soon pass. However, as time passed, I realized I had no idea how to deal with it. Tom remained close, his breathing steady, and the warmth between us seemed to intensify. I wanted to say something lighthearted, something to break the tension, but no words came. I felt trapped, uncertain of what I was feeling. Tom shifted again, lifting his head to look at me. His eyes had a softness, filled with a warmth that made me feel secure, but also brought up emotions I couldn't understand. It was only a look, but it made me feel more than I was willing to acknowledge. I tried to smile once more, hoping it would ease the odd sensation, but it didn't. Tom's hand stayed near mine, and I could feel his fingers still moving gently. Every touch seemed to awaken something inside me that I didn't want to confront. I tried to breathe steadily, hoping not to reveal how fast my heart was racing. As we sat there in silence, I reminded myself that this was simply a mother comforting her son, nothing more. But in the quiet, my mind spun with thoughts that felt wrong, yet I couldn't shake them. He was my son, but lying so close to him, I felt a closeness that was hard to comprehend. It was confusing, yet comforting, and I felt torn. Tom didn't seem to notice my inner conflict. He just lay beside me, his hand moving softly as if it were the most natural thing in the world. His breathing was calm, and his eyes closed again, and I wondered if he had drifted off to sleep. But then his hand moved slowly up my arm, and I felt a chill run through me as he opened his eyes and looked directly into mine. There was a question in his gaze, as if asking if this was okay, if I felt the same pull he did. I barely managed to whisper his name, my voice barely audible. I wanted to move to put some space between us, but somehow I couldn't. The tension between us felt too intense, like a quiet storm building in the stillness. Then, as if it were the most natural thing to do, he leaned in closer. My heart raced, my mind spun, but I couldn't pull away. I felt torn, caught between the person I was and the unfamiliar emotions that had emerged. As he leaned in closer, I felt my breath catch, and all thoughts faded, leaving only that moment between us. Tom moved slightly again, lifting his head to look at me. His eyes were gentle, holding warmth that made me feel secure, but also stirred feelings I couldn't explain. It was just a look, yet it made me feel more than I was ready to admit. I attempted to smile again, hoping it would calm the uneasy feeling, but it didn't work. Tom's hand remained steady near mine, and I could feel his fingertips gently moving, every touch pulling something from within me, something I wasn't ready to confront. I kept my breathing calm, trying not to let him realize how fast my heart was beating. Tom's hand settled lightly on my shoulder, his fingers lingering as if he too was uncertain. The world around us felt distant, and all I could focus on was the warmth of his presence. For a brief moment, I shut my eyes, trying to calm myself and break the closeness that felt so confusing and overwhelming. But then, I felt his hand gently lift, brushing a strand of hair away from my face. It was such a simple, tender gesture, yet it made my heart ache in ways I couldn't explain. I opened my eyes to find him looking at me with such gentleness, such trust. His face was close, and I could see every small detail: the faint freckles, the soft curve of his lips, the way his eyes searched mine. There was a vulnerability in his gaze that mirrored my own, and I could see that he, too, was as lost in this moment as I was. We stayed like that, suspended in the quiet, as if time had frozen. My mind was a whirlwind of questions and doubts. This person I knew so well now felt like a stranger. Just when I thought we'd stay in that silence forever, Tom pulled back slightly, breaking the moment. He looked away, almost embarrassed, and let out a soft laugh, rubbing the back of his neck. It brought me back to reality, making me realize just how close we'd been. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the rush of emotions inside, hoping he hadn't noticed. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, his voice filled with uncertainty. "I didn't mean to make things awkward." He avoided my gaze, and I could see a flush creeping onto his cheeks, like he was struggling with the same confusion I felt. I wanted to reassure him, to tell him everything was fine, but the words got stuck in my throat. I didn't know what to say, and for the first time in a long while, I felt awkward around him. I reached out, placing my hand on his shoulder, and gave him a small smile, hoping it would ease the tension. "It's okay," I said softly. "It's just, we've been us for so long. We're probably both just feeling a little lost." He nodded, and I saw a flicker of relief in his eyes. Just as the tension between us began to ease, the doorbell rang. The sudden sound startled us both, shattering whatever spell had been between us. I quickly stood up, my heart still racing, and went to the door, relieved for the interruption. When I opened it, I found our neighbor, Mike, standing there. He was someone I could always rely on when I needed help. He smiled, but his gaze lingered on me a bit longer than usual, and I realized I still felt that strange energy from the moment with Tom. I tried to compose myself, hoping Mike hadn't noticed anything off. "Hey," he said warmly. "I thought I'd stop by and see if you needed anything. It's been a bit colder lately, and I can help with any heating issues if you've got them." I felt a sudden wave of relief and allowed myself to relax for a moment. "Thanks, Mike," I replied, smiling. "Actually, the house does get a bit chilly. I'd appreciate it." Mike stepped inside, and I could feel Tom watching us from the hallway, his face unreadable. I glanced back at him, and for a moment I saw something flicker in his eyes, something like jealousy, though he quickly tried to hide it. It surprised me, leaving me wondering if he was feeling more than he let on. As Mike checked the heater, he asked me a few questions about how things were at home. We made small talk, but I kept glancing at Tom, who remained silent, watching us with an odd intensity. I could sense his discomfort, and it added a new layer of tension to the room. After a few minutes, Mike turned to me with a smile. "All right, everything looks good here. Just call if you need any more help." I thanked him, and as he left, I felt the tension between Tom and me grow even thicker. I closed the door and turned to see him standing there, arms crossed, his expression serious. "Are you okay?" I asked, trying to understand what he was feeling. He shrugged, looking away, his voice quiet. "Yeah, I'm fine. I just didn't expect Mike to stop by, that's all." I wanted to reach out, to understand what was happening between us, but before I could say anything else, he walked past me, heading to his room without another word. The door closed softly behind him, and I stood there, feeling a strange mix of relief, confusion, and a lingering sense of something unfinished. I stood there for a moment, staring at Tom's closed door, feeling an ache I couldn't fully understand. My mind was spinning with everything that had happened: the closeness we'd shared, the way his gaze lingered when Mike was there, and the strange, unspoken tension between us. I knew I couldn't ignore it forever, but I wasn't sure how to face it. Just as I was about to walk away, I heard a gentle knock at my door, my heart racing with the thought that Tom might have returned. I took a deep breath to calm myself and called out, "Come in." The door creaked open, and Tom entered, his face composed yet serious. He walked over and sat beside me on the edge of the bed, his eyes fixed downward. We sat in silence for a while, neither of us sure how to begin. The atmosphere between us was thick, filled with unspoken words. Finally, he broke the silence, his voice soft and uncertain. Mom, I'm sorry. I don't know what happened earlier. I didn't mean to make things awkward. I looked at him, feeling a blend of relief and sorrow. It's okay, I replied gently, reaching out to place my hand on his. Sometimes things can be confusing. Maybe it's because it's just been the two of us for so long. We're very close, and sometimes that closeness can feel strange, but we're still family. He nodded, still looking at his hands. I guess I just don't want things to change. You're my mom, but you're also my best friend. I didn't want to make you uncomfortable. I gave his hand a soft squeeze. Tom, you don't need to worry. Our relationship won't change. We just need to keep things in perspective and remember who we are to each other. It's okay to be close, but we also need to give each other space sometimes. He looked up at me, his eyes filled with emotions that were hard for him to express. Thank you for understanding, he whispered, a touch of relief in his voice. I smiled at him, feeling the warmth of our connection returning to something familiar and comforting. We'll always be here for each other, Tom. That won't ever change. For the first time that evening, the tension seemed to lift. We sat together, chatting about simpler things, the events of the day, his plans with friends, my work. It felt like a weight had been lifted, and we were finding our way back to the bond we had always shared. The following days felt different, but in a good way. Tom and I fell back into our usual routines, finding comfort in the everyday moments we spent together. There was a newfound understanding between us, a quiet acknowledgement of our closeness without overstepping any boundaries. We both knew we could talk openly about anything, and that seemed to bring us even closer. One evening, as we were finishing dinner, Tom turned to me with a thoughtful expression. Mom, I think I want to get more involved in things outside of school. Maybe join a club or pick up a new hobby. I think it would be good for me. I smiled, feeling proud of his maturity. I think that's a great idea, Tom. It's important to have interests and friends outside of home. You'll make new connections and have fresh experiences. He nodded, a small smile on his face. Yeah, I think so too. And maybe you could start doing something for yourself too. You're always taking care of me. It would be nice if you did something for you. His words touched me, and I realized he was right. I'd been so focused on him and our home life that I hadn't thought about my own interests in a long time. You know, I think you're right, I said, smiling back. Maybe I'll look into a class or a group activity. We laughed, and in that moment, it felt like we had both found a new direction, a way to support each other while also giving each other space to grow. It felt like the beginning of something healthy and balanced. In the weeks that followed, Tom joined a local sports club and began meeting new friends. He seemed happier, more confident, and I could see him becoming his own person. I also took his advice and joined a book club, reconnecting with old friends and making new ones. We were both growing, finding our own paths, but still coming home to each other. Reflecting on it all, I realized that relationships, especially with those we love deeply, can sometimes blur the lines. But with open communication, patience, and understanding, we can find our way back to what truly matters. For Tom and me, our bond remained unbreakable. It had shifted, but it had also grown stronger, deeper, and more resilient. We both learned that sometimes giving each other space is the best way to show love. We didn't need to be everything for each other all the time. We just needed to be there when it mattered. True love and trust mean giving each other the freedom to grow and explore new paths. Through understanding and a little space, we can keep our relationships strong and healthy. Have you ever had to find balance in a relationship? How did giving space or changing routines help you grow closer? Thank you for listening to our story. If this story resonated with you, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell to stay updated. But our journey isn't over. Little did I know that giving Tom space to grow would bring unexpected challenges and test our bond in ways I hadn't anticipated. Sometimes, even when you think you found peace, life has a way of surprising you.